Grok 4. This is the latest artificial intelligence system. We are now at the crossroads where promise and peril are going to collide.
Grok is Elon Musk's AI, built by xAI on the Colossus supercomputer, over 200,000 NVIDIA GPUs, designed to be maximally truth-seeking, no guardrails, no institutional loyalty, just data. When researchers fed Grok the complete Nag Hammadi library, 52 ancient texts the early church tried to burn, and asked what the Gnostic Gospels actually say about Jesus, the AI didn't give the Sunday school version. It gave the version the church spent 17 centuries trying to destroy. According to these texts, the God of the Old Testament isn't the supreme creator. He's a blind, arrogant imposter. Jesus didn't die on the cross. He stood above it and laughed. The serpent in Eden wasn't the villain. It was the only one telling the truth. The disciple who understood Jesus best wasn't Peter. It was Judas. No institution with a stake in the orthodox narrative ever wanted you to hear it presented this clearly. Here's what Grok decoded, and why scholars are shaken. In December 1945, near Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt, a farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman struck a sealed terracotta jar. Inside were 13 leather-bound papyrus codices, 52 texts in Coptic, all of them banned, condemned, and ordered destroyed by the institutional church over 16 centuries earlier. These are the Gnostic Gospels. In 367 CE, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria issued his Easter letter, defining the exact 27 books of the New Testament, but he also ordered every heretical book eliminated from monastic libraries. His word was law. The monks faced excommunication, or worse, once heresy became a crime against the Roman state. Near Nag Hammadi sat a Pachomian monastery. When Athanasius's purge came, the monks didn't burn the books. They sealed them in a jar and buried them at the cliff's base. They chose to hide knowledge rather than let it die. There it sat, for 1,578 years, until a farmer's shovel cracked the jar. Today, as of 2026, Grok 4.2, with its massive context window and multimodal processing, can read these codices in original Coptic, cross-reference them against the entire canonical Bible, and identify patterns human scholars have never quantified. The AI has no denomination, no seminary training, no reputation to protect. It follows the data, and the data leads somewhere the institutional church never wanted anyone to go. The first explosive claim in the Gnostic texts, the God of the Old Testament is not the true God. He's a lower, flawed, possibly malevolent being who created the physical universe as a prison. In the secret book of John, his name is Yaldabaoth, described as misshapen, the face of a lion, the body of a serpent, called Saklas, the fool, and Samael, the blind god. He declares, "I am a jealous God. Without me, there is no one." The Gnostic authors noted the logical fallacy. Saying there's no other God already implies one exists. Grok's linguistic analysis reveals that across the entire Gnostic corpus, vocabulary describing the material world pairs consistently with words like shadow, prison, and defective. An anti-cosmic lexicon, a deliberate framework reframing the physical universe as a mistake. This isn't buried in one obscure text. It's structural to Gnostic theology. The Gnostic texts don't just challenge who God is, they invert the entire book of Genesis. According to Gnostic myth, Sophia, wisdom, tried to produce creation without her divine consort. The result was Yaldabaoth, a defective god who built a defective world, populating it with beings carrying a divine spark that Sophia accidentally passed down. In the canonical Bible, the serpent is the villain. In the Gnostic texts, the serpent is the hero. The hypostasis of the archons suggests Sophia herself entered the serpent to teach humanity. The serpent encouraged Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, not to damn them, but to wake them up. To reveal their true spiritual selves came from beyond this world. The God who forbade the fruit was the one keeping them in darkness. In these texts, the fall isn't catastrophe, it's liberation. The moment humanity remembered who they really were, and the being who triggered that memory was the one the Orthodox Church would later call Satan. Grok's cross-referencing maps this structural inversion with mathematical precision. Every element in Genesis framed as good, creation, obedience, the garden, becomes a mechanism of control. Every element framed as evil, the serpent, forbidden knowledge, disobedience, becomes the path to salvation. In Orthodox Christianity, the crucifixion is humanity's salvation. God's Son dies to atone for sin. The Gnostic texts say it didn't happen that way. The Second Treatise of the Great Seth describes the crucifixion as a cosmic joke. Jesus stood above the cross, amused, watching as the archons tortured a substitute body. Many traditions identify this as Simon of Cyrene. The executioners were deaf and blind. The Gnostic Jesus laughed, not from cruelty, but understanding. The material body isn't real. It cannot be harmed. The true spiritual Christ was untouched. The entire crucifixion was performance by rulers powerless against the light. Then there's Judas. In canonical tradition, Judas is the ultimate traitor. But the Gospel of Judas presented a radically different narrative. Judas as the only disciple who understood Jesus' mission. Yet April DeConnick of Rice University published a devastating correction. Where National Geographic translated Coptic as spirit, the original meant demon. Where they said Judas would exceed the other disciples, the text said he'd do worse. Where they said he was set apart for the holy generation, Coptic said he was separated from it. Grok confirms DeConnick's corrections. The Gospel of Judas is radical, but differently than headlines suggested. Jesus tells Judas the cosmic truth, but Judas still receives no salvation. The pattern across the Gnostic corpus. Knowing truth isn't enough. Transformation is. Even Judas failed to achieve it. The answer to why you've never heard this in church is not complicated. The institutional church spent 3 centuries systematically destroying every copy. Around 180 CE, Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon wrote against heresies, making the Gnostic position so repugnant no one would take it seriously. He attacked the concept of the pleroma and argued only 4 Gospels could be true, matching the 4 winds and 4 corners. Any other Gospel was false. Tertullian was horrified that Gnostic women taught, disputed, performed exorcisms, and possibly baptized. Suppression wasn't purely theological. It was about power, about who spoke, about who stood between humanity and God. Then came Athanasius in 367 CE with his list and his burning order, followed by Theodosian decrees making possession of these texts criminal. One sealed jar in the Egyptian desert survived a multi-century campaign of biblioclasm, systematic book destruction. Grok's analysis of heresiological texts reveals something long suspected. The Church Fathers consistently misrepresented the positions they attacked. They built straw men. They distorted. They caricatured. Suppression was intellectual, not just physical. They didn't just burn books. They rewrote what the book said. The AI's most significant finding isn't about any single text. It's about relationships between Gnostic and canonical Gospels. When Grok maps the Gospel of Thomas against the canonical synoptics, it identifies something extraordinary. Thomas shares many sayings with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but has no narrative framework, no birth, miracles, passion, or resurrection, just 114 pure sayings. Computational analysis positions Thomas closer to the hypothetical Q source, the lost document scholars believe Matthew and Luke drew from, than to the finished canonical Gospels. Dating models suggest Thomas's sayings may preserve material from as early as 60 CE. If true, the Gnostic-leaning Jesus of Thomas is potentially older than the institutional version that replaced him. The Gospel of John is the most Gnostic text in the canonical New Testament. Light versus darkness dualism, I am statements, logos theology. John overlaps with Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Truth in ways no other canonical gospel matches. The Gospel of John may have narrowly escaped suppression, saved not for being fundamentally different, but because second-century editors successfully reinterpreted it through an orthodox lens. The Book of Enoch, canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, rejected by the West, shares a cosmological framework with Nag Hammadi texts. Both describe complex angelic hierarchies, fallen beings corrupting humanity through forbidden knowledge, and pre-existent cosmic figures bringing salvation through revelation rather than sacrifice. Grok's cross-linguistic analysis identifies high overlap between Gaia's Enoch and Coptic Gnostic texts, pointing to a shared mystical tradition the Roman Church could never fully extinguish. Here's what the AI decoded: a theology where the creator of the physical world is a blind fool who trapped divine sparks in matter. A Genesis where the serpent liberates and obedience cages. A crucifixion where Jesus laughs because the rulers tortured a shadow. A tradition where the disciple closest to truth is the church's greatest traitor. And a centuries-long suppression campaign so thorough it took a farmer's shovel and 17 centuries of sand to undo. The AI didn't invent these teachings. It read what was already there and presented it without institutional filter. That's what terrified them. Not that the AI found something new, but that it said out loud what had been buried in the data for nearly 2,000 years. The Gnostic Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you and all around you. Those who come to know themselves will find it. The institutional church said the kingdom is accessed through them, through their priests, their sacraments, their authority. One controls a global institution, the other was sealed in a jar and buried in the desert. The AI just opened the jar again. Tell us in the comments, which version was worth hiding? Subscribe for what the machines are uncovering next.